Hello, and welcome to this episode of the How to Choose Happiness and Freedom Show. I'm your host, Lauren Foster, happiness teacher and founder of Be Happy First. And this is the place where we learn to be happy and free on purpose. And it's my honor to gather guests that I want to learn from so that you can learn from them with me. And without further ado, I want to introduce today's guest, Kumari Mullen. And I didn't ask you about pronouncing your name before we started. So,
Perfect. You did
okay.
perfect, Lauren.
Awesome. Kumari is the founder of Divine Human Institute. She's an expert on energy healing and manifesting and attaining bliss, which we're going to talk about. So, welcome, Kumari.
Thank you, and
Hey,
welcome to you too. Thank you so much for having me. I love your topic, and I love the on purpose part.
Yeah, yeah, understanding that we're creating this life, right? And we get to do it however we want.
Yes, it takes us into out of this randomness. What everybody thinks happiness is something that happens to you, and therefore you're happy, you know, and lucky. Or it takes us out of that expectation that everything outside has to be so, the right car, the right house, the right relationship, in
Right.
order for us to be happy. It's like we spend our lives searching outside of ourselves and don't realize that it's an inner journey and an inner purpose that we can align with every day and every moment, actually.
Yay, and you're going to teach us how to do that. So, well, before we start, tell us that let everybody get to know you a little bit. What's your story?
Sure. So my story, we were chatting before we get on, and I interestingly was a lawyer. I was just out of law school, and I worked at Legal Aid in Baltimore, legal counsel for the elderly, actually, and first, and then Legal Aid. And my father died of lung cancer in a very short period of time, very sudden. He was only 60 at the time. And I didn't know it at the time. I had no clue for many, many, many years to tell the story this way. But now looking back, somebody asked me to write my story, and I realized all the connections. At first I was like, I'm not telling people I'm an attorney. What does that have to do with being a spiritual teacher and an energy healer? But the truth is, it has everything to do with it, because if I can shift out of that logical, rational brain pursuit that I was in, probably the ultimate logical, rational brain pursuit, right? Being a lawyer, um, into this spiritual teaching, energy healing, then everyone can do it. It's not like I was born with this gift and, it just happened. It's all random. You either have it or you don't, kind of thing. And I think that's the beauty of this story. So my father died, and I don't even remember being conscious of it, but I remember the deep longing in my heart that led me to wanting to do more. I think everybody has felt that when somebody beloved to them is suffering. And I just felt like he got the best care. He was actually a doctor in his own hospital, so people were taking beautiful care of him, but he died. And I felt like I need to find out more about this death and dying process that I just watched him go through, more about my own journey, more about helping other people. I just thought more. And of course, at Legal Aid, there was another person who was following a spiritual path. And I ended up going to see her spiritual teacher or guru from India. And that led to a series of things. Very soon after that, I was finding myself in a Reiki energy healing class. I didn't even believe in it. I was thinking, I don't even know what this is. I don't think I believe it. I
Right.
was very, very skeptical. But there was an inner driver that was saying, find out, find out. There's more to this universe. There's more to this life. There's more to our own innate power to, I guess, ease suffering. That was the phrase that kept coming to me. I want to be able to do more in those moments where you feel so helpless, where you just want to be able to give more. And I have to say that this path of energy healing and energy medicine and spiritual awakening has put me in that enviable place, I guess, of I still grieve, I still have sadness and sorrow, but I always feel like I can give my best. that there's this whole other part of me that wasn't accessed at that time, that I now have access to. And when I'm in that wholeness of self, then I know what to do. I know that I'm giving from my highest self and my highest heart. And I feel sad but complete, rather than how I felt when my dad passed, which was I didn't do enough. I didn't do enough. So it wasn't my fault. I didn't have any of this knowledge then or ability. But it started my journey, and I didn't see that. One door closes and the other opens. So only looking back after probably a few decades, I went, oh my gosh, it was totally orchestrated. As much of our big awakening and healings are, right? They're orchestrated sometimes by very distinct and traumatic events. Not that that's the best way to awaken, but it's kind of the human experience, isn't it?
It kind of is how things almost have to happen. And
Yeah.
so, and what I hear in your story is the gifts that were given you all along the way. First, in the skills that you acquired learning to become a lawyer, and
Yeah.
having that seeking out for information, and the ability and the willingness to learn. You brought that with you into your spiritual path.
I
And
did, and that researching, we were taught to research. I dropped long ago that I know anything. And if anything, law school made you aware of all that you don't know, and so you have to start becoming comfortable with not knowing, which is
right.
actually a good space to be in,
Right,
spiritually
absolutely.
speaking.
And then the grief and pain of the loss of your father,
Yeah.
the gift from that, you're sometimes things, of course, everyone is going to die. And as we're, on a spiritual path, we understand that there can be no life without death.
And
So,
wanting to understand that
yeah,
was the gift, wanting to really understand, well, this is the other piece that happened. He started showing up for me. And I can't say that before that. I was always very inward focused, and probably I didn't have these words, but intuitive. But I didn't, it wasn't really honored in my family. It was very much a logical, scientific oriented family. So whatever I had wasn't expressible really. But what happened was his spirit started being with me after his death, and it was undeniable. There were experiences where I would demand, show me patient, and I'd get this little pinky um, thing rise up, and we used to do that in church. It was like a little family affection moment. We grabbed pinkies in church together, and so I would ask for validation. Is this you, Dad? I was singing some of our favorite songs in the car, and that's when it came from that connection. And I swore I felt him sitting next to me, but I had never had those experiences, and I didn't want to label them as a ghost or anything. I was just like, this feels very much like you. Is it you? And I asked for a sign, and my pinky was pulled up, and things like that were happening. So I was given different validations of what happens beyond death. That he was certainly fine and able to connect with me, and I didn't tell anybody for probably a good year. A dear friend said, I'm really worried about you. You're not grieving enough. Your father died and I haven't seen you cry. And it wasn't that I never cried, but I was having this whole other experience of beyond death. And that's what I really wanted to convey. I wanted to have that understanding so we no longer have this tremendous fear and sorrow and suffering. And we learn how to have that connection. And I didn't even know it at the time that that's what I wanted to give others. But because I was afraid to share that was what was happening, it seemed at that time really unconventional, if you will. Come to find out, all of my clients over the years have had those experiences, either with family members or most often with their animals. They'd feel their kitty walking across the bed at night, or their deceased doggy sitting at their feet, or but they wouldn't tell anybody because they thought everyone's going to think I'm nuts. So,
yeah, people will think I'm weird.
yeah, so it became not just easing suffering, but really diving deep into the mysteries, the life mystery and death mystery, and sort of unraveling that so we're not so terrified and feeling so helpless.
Right.
And I'd forgotten that part.
Yeah, we have forgotten that we are eternal, that this
Yeah.
human experience is just a blip on the radar of who we really are, you know? Yeah.
Yeah, and just that knowing when you have, I mean, some people have that through their religious faith. You know, they have a knowing that they're eternal, that they're spirit. But I'll tell you, having the direct experience, there's nothing like the direct experience, because I was taught that as well. But you know, you still, it's a it's a belief that's out there, but it's not here. You know, and once you have that experience, and I've been able to share that experience with a lot of people, the deep grief goes. We still have the missing, you know, but that deep grief of I've lost this person and I don't know where they went, and it brings up all our fear of death, and so it's eased the path tremendously, that piece of it. And the bliss came a little bit later than that. Those were the initial sparks of awakening, and the veil, you know, thinning, the veil between what we call reality and the rest of the true reality, which is divine consciousness or universal awareness, all that is, source, God, you know, whatever labels we put on it.
Right.
And bliss is that state of knowing that and being in that knowing. And it's not just one way of being or feeling. And that's what I used to think. I used to think it was a peak experience. Like I had one peak experience shortly after that with, they talk about in the mystical teachings of the East, they talk a lot about the transmission of a master or a guru, that you need a guru in order to awaken, you know, and there's a lot of truth in that. It really speeds up the journey. It really helps to have somebody who's already in a higher vibrational frequency than us, or higher consciousness. It's like anything you want to learn, you go to a master, you go to somebody who's an expert. So in the same way, that's true. But there was a strong teaching about the direct transmission from such a teacher of their state and awakening the Kundalini, you know, all those ideas of awakening that spiritual energy within us that lies dormant, but it's in all of us, not just some of us. It's not a gift. It's just not activated.
Well, it is a gift, but we all have it. We just
Yes, thank you. It's not a gift of the few, I should say.
right,
Yeah.
right. It's a gift for everyone.
Thank you.
Okay,
Yes.
yeah. So let's back up and break that down a little bit, because
Yeah. Yeah.
a lot of places where you know, a lot of our listeners will be
Thank you.
kunda what?
Lingo.
Kunda what? Kundalini. Okay, so and this was my next question anyway. So what is bliss? What are you meaning when you say bliss in
So
all this?
coming back to that, the classic awakening or classic um, Kundalini is the dormant spiritual energy that lies within us all. And so spiritual awakening in the Eastern tradition is called Kundalini awakening,
Okay.
same idea. And it's this awakening of sort of our lower self to our higher self, if you will. And many of those experiences are written about in all the ancient texts, you know, as mystical, right? Unexplainable to science at that time, but every religious tradition was describing that in their mystics. The mystics were having all the same experiences. So that's kind of cool when you realize it's not just one way or one thought, but that everybody that went deep, deep, deep into their tradition could access these higher consciousness states. So bliss is what comes up when I say that. And it was initially, it felt like a total gift. It felt like nothing I could be on purpose about, right? So it happened in a moment when I was driving, actually, shortly after a retreat with my teacher. And it was about prosperity and abundance, which I felt like I hugely misunderstood and didn't have any of at the time. I was working in legal aid, you know, very low pay, a mountain of debt, and I was desperate to figure this out. So I took this course, and I felt like total dud. The whole course, nothing was happening. I was sitting, and they were teaching, and they actually taught initially about going for happiness rather than all the things. They asked everybody in the audience, you know, what's your greatest desire? And people raised their hand and said, a beautiful home on the hill, you know, a fast car, all the things you might think of, a wonderful relationship, kids. financial prosperity, all of it. And finally the teacher said, why do you want those? And underneath all of them, broken down, was happiness. People thought that if I have this, I'll be happy. If I have that, I'll be happy. And he started out the whole course, why don't you go straight for happiness directly and not put it outside? And so on the drive home from that, when nothing happened for me, you know, I was feeling like a total dud, right? We all do that. We sit, we have these classes or experiences, we're really expecting the big ahas, and nothing happens. We get so frustrated. Well, that was me. 3 days and bupkis, sitting for 12 hours. And driving home, something happened where everything in my vision shifted. I started looking around and I would see, I can only describe it as waves of scintillating light flowing through everything I looked at, trees, leaves, grass, cloud. Everything was glowing and emanating, but it was also in this subtle waveform of light and radiance and luminosity. But it wasn't just a visual, it was a full-on bliss. I didn't have the word at that time. Full-on connection, awe, inspiration, feeling like I was the tree that I was looking at, that I was the leaf, that the leaves and the trees were waving to me, were honoring me, were blessing me, and I was blessing them with my gaze, with my thought, with my, in other words, it was a total interconnected play of this divine conscious, exquisite euphoria. Other people might say it was a really good trip, you know, some hallucinogenic or something. But and that's why people take them, right? To have these experiences. And it went on and on and on until I finally thought, you know, I'm driving on the Washington, D.C. Beltway. This might not be safe. And as soon as I had that fear that I was driving at 85 miles an hour and in this altered, clearly altered state, it shut down. But I started thinking, well, is this just seeing life? You know, I looked at living things first, trees, and I literally felt like every tree was saying thank you to me. You know, there was the deepest gratitude and appreciation and reverence and awe. And so I looked at the road itself, and sure enough, I saw the same light waves emanating. It was like nothing was really solid. Everything was just this beautiful rendition, but it was alive. Everything was enlivened. And so that was going on for probably a good 30 minutes until I stopped it with my fear that I might be a danger to others.
Oh, that's beautiful. And the truth in that is that everything is alive. Everything is infused with the energy, the divine energy of the world. Yeah.
I once read from the quantum physics world where they're starting to measure all this at the subatomic level. We are all 99.999% energy in the form of light waves. And I went, holy crap, that's what I saw. That's what I felt. That's what I had the direct experience of that. And, you know, your life alters after an experience like this.
Mhm.
And I've had several. This was just the first one.
First one.
So several at that, but I also put it aside and thought, that's a gift. That's a peak experience. That's bliss, and nothing else is that. And until I'm in that state, I'm not where I need to be, you know. And I sort of, right? I sort of judged it as the experience and everything else lesser. So that's kind of what I wanted to talk about. Not that we should be in that space all the time, because I'm certainly not in that space. It's not a very functional space to be in,
Right.
you know, for operating computers and electronics and driving and sharp knives, cooking, and all the things that we would not want to be in that space for. But it was the inspiration to keep going through the dry spells, you know, through the times that I wasn't that, and to know that there's this whole other conscious experience that's possible, and that everything that the mystics talked about was attainable. And that to me that was the fire that was lit in me. It's kind of the honeymoon, you know, that you have this huge grand experience,
Right.
and then you get to work. So
Right.
it keeps you going through the deeper work of it all.
Okay, so and the very basis of Be Happy First is be happy first. Don't put your happiness as a condition on anything outside of you.
Yeah.
And so where does the practical work from after having this your experience feels to me like an oh, now I see that I'm a part of everything and everything is part of me and everything is eternal, and it does not matter what car I'm driving or what house I'm in or what's in my bank account, that my happiness doesn't ride on any of those things. So then how do you after that experience, how do you begin to incorporate that feeling into your day to day? And
Well, that's a perfect question. What was taught to me was that you must sit in meditation for hours and hours and hours a day, that you must practice mantras and chanting, you know, all the ancient techniques. And they serve me beautifully, don't get me wrong. I wouldn't give up my years and years and years and decades of that practice, because I know it instilled in me a centeredness, a groundedness, uh, a ground of beingness that is raising the platform of my vibration to have more and more of these bliss experiences. But it wasn't until I started doing certain energy alchemy techniques, I call them. I started studying energy healing, and in those spaces with people, I would enter into this amazing appreciation and happiness and gratitude and feeling of blessing people as they bless me. You know, their willingness to receive energy healing was a blessing to me, to be more fully me and to give what I now knew I could give. And their experience blessed me back of them feeling better and having different experiences of health and well-being and clarity and wisdom and connectedness as well. So I think more and more I found methods that would put me in alignment with that experience of that higher state of bliss. And I didn't see that I could claim that I could teach it for a long time. I still felt like the perennial student, you know. But more and more, my clients were reporting that they were easily stepping into these really high level classical mystical experiences with some of the techniques I was sharing. And when that was happening consistently, I started saying, I can claim this, you know, not as a promise that every person every time is going to slip into this, but that these states are way more accessible than I once thought. And they're not gifts that you randomly receive from outside or from years and decades and lifetimes of practice that helps. So what helps is many things, you know, as you probably teach, you know, that we can begin to alter our brain waves based on our practices, on our thoughts every day, on our choices, understanding that we're empowered to choose how we feel at any given moment. And that's the start of it, you know, the empowerment of choice, that what we think is action and reaction. You know, if things are going well, then I'm happy and I have to make everything go well. So we get into total controlling, right? We try to control everything. And we know how that works.
right.
And, you know, that puts us in a contraction, you know, rather than an experience of accepting and allowing and flowing, which is more of the state that is more likely to produce happiness, joy, bliss, peace, you know, the higher states. So there are many, many practices that I now have. I decided at one point to put them all together into a retreat, the ones where most of my clients were reaching those higher states pretty regularly. And so there are techniques, energy tools, if you will. I like to call it alchemy, because alchemy is that old word of trying to change a base metal to gold, you know. But the alchemists were actually quite spiritual. They were trying to understand the true nature of all matter and all reality and how we impact that. And so their study went way beyond just trying to make money out of a piece of lead, you know. It exposed them to all the ways, like you said earlier, that we manifest our reality, that we understand the connectedness of all of us, and that we are a huge part of co-creating that reality.
Right. So do most of your clients come to you we're talking about mystical experiences and the spiritual awakening. Do people come to you already knowing that that's what they want, or do people come to you
I
for?
don't think so. I think some of them, the first Bliss retreat I taught, I asked people, how many people have had a Bliss experience, you know, who would even claim it? And maybe half, you know, kind of. And down to some people didn't even believe it possible and didn't even know what bliss was. So I think there's quite the range. I would say that people come to feel better. They come for more well-being. They come because they know they're missing out on something. And I don't know that they always have a very clear vision of bliss. It's only recently that I have that, you know, recently meaning the last 7-8 years or so. But I've been teaching energy healing, energy medicine practices and alchemy and meditation and spiritual practices for 30 years. So it's only lately that I have felt, I guess, confident to claim that piece and hold myself out as I can pretty assuredly get you the elements to start building your platform to more happiness to start, which turns into a higher level of joy that we call it. And then ultimately these states of pure flow, pure connection, pure peace and bliss and greatest understanding and wisdom and everything we want. But I don't know that people might say they wanted, but I don't even know that I had a clue. And until you have an experience like that, it's something you can read about, but it doesn't really make sense until you're in it.
Right. And it almost feels like diversity and pain and trauma bring people to this area. I'm tired of being broken and poor.
Yes.
I'm tired of being sick, and I'm tired
Yes.
of being whatever, whatever, whatever. Maybe this will help me to get those things that I want. And
I'll take however you come to that choice. I don't judge. I don't ask people to be believers before they have direct experience. As a matter of fact, I kind of like that. To me, it's healthier,
yeah.
you know, to come in with I don't know, I'll check this out versus, oh, I believe you're gonna save me, you know.
Right.
Yeah, it's a healthier balance of, I ask people to get into 51%. Do you think it's possible that you can be happier and that you can continue expanding that state so you can be in this highest consciousness, higher mind, higher self, higher access? And I think the proof's in the pudding always for everyone. And I only teach things that have produced that for me. So they're time tested. I don't just grab what everyone else is saying. The things that have worked for me and all of my clients is what I teach. So yeah, I don't expect that people are all mystical about it, you know, and wanting that. That comes later. A lot of times they came to me because their animals were sick. You know, I was working a lot with animals over the years. And boy, that was a driver for many people. They won't do their own spiritual or personal growth work because maybe they just don't have a clue what that is, or they're just scared of unveiling, you know, the shadow side and the painful parts and all. They don't want. But boy, as soon as their beloved pets are in trouble, so I used to say that the animals are bringing everyone to their spiritual work.
You know, I can totally understand that because I mean, decades ago when I was very, I don't know, if somebody said, "Oh, it's a pet psychic," I would go, whatever. But we can't. But isn't it so much more freeing to have a more open mind and to be so unattached to any old beliefs or things like that? But our pets can't tell us, and we can't read their minds. And the idea that somebody else might be able to give us insight into what's going on with them, I get that. And what a great gift that we domesticated animals so that they could lead us on a spiritual path. I think that's lovely.
And they wouldn't call it spiritual. They would just say, I want to feel better too.
Right.
And this over here feels good to me. Why don't you do more of this? And some of them are very, very aware, and conscious. They're on a scale of evolution as well. So some of their consciousness is highly, highly evolved, and some is middle, and some is, a little less. But they trust their feeling body. They trust energy that feels good to them.
You're talking about
So
animals.
they haven't let go of that like most humans have.
Gotcha. That's really interesting. I'm gonna spend some time looking into the eyes of my pets today and see if I can tell what level they're on
You know
vibrationally.
what the easiest communication is, and the one that we mostly can recognize. This might surprise you, but it's a deep, heartfelt hello. When you come from it, I had a client. I was doing a podcast with her, I think, and I was in Orlando at the time, and we were walking in a park afterwards, and she was walking behind me, and I was just doing my walk, and I was saying hello to everyone. There were a lot of animals out, people walking their dogs and squirrels and birds, and there were swans in the lake. And by the time we got to the lake, the swans were right, but I wasn't noticing because I was just saying hello to everyone. Well, she talked about it later, and she said, that thing you do when you're out. And I said, what are you talking about? She goes, you're like the Pied Piper. And I said, I'm not sure what you mean. And she goes, remember in Orlando at the lake when all the animals, they were all spread out around the huge lake and park. They all, by the end, were all around you. They all wanted to get in your energy, in your sphere. She said, the swans, when we started, were across the lake. And the closer you got, they just started swimming to you as soon as you came. And by the time you were at the lake's edge, they were sitting there. And I said, I didn't notice that. And she said, are you kidding me? It was so obvious. She said, I saw dogs pulling their owners to be on your path. She said, what are you doing? You're calling them all in. I said, not in the sense of that. I'm just in my heart saying hello. And there's nothing that feels so welcoming and so juicy and so brilliantly loving than a heartfelt hello. And so animals are doing this a lot. So you might just play with the hello, and everybody on the call just practice saying hello with that open-hearted, I really appreciate you.
Yeah, that's
And
all.
even when they're out of the room, you may find that they often come right in. Because it's the energy, you see, it's the energy that you're in that they haven't let go of understanding that means something, and that's a good thing. They haven't shut down the spidey sense of feeling.
I don't want to get off into a complete dissertation about all the pet activity around.
No,
but I have noticed that I'll in the morning I haven't seen one of the cats. I wonder where you are, and within a minute they show up. It's like, here I am, Mom. They're like
yes,
they know.
they are very tuned into us. We may not be tuned into them, but they do tune into us.
Right.
And so coming back to the happiness and bliss, people, they think that I'm doing something unique that's making their animal that is so afraid of everyone else. And I said, it's my energy field. It's not that they like me as a person. They don't know Kumari as a person. Right. They're not favoring me. They just feel safe. This energy of being in our heart and feeling happy on up the scale to joy and bliss, that feels really good, really safe, really like, I can relax in this. Yeah. So it has an imprint, if you will, that ripples out into our universe. So, and animals can still feel that. People can too when they tune in, but they a lot of times aren't tuned in.
Yeah, a lot of us are not paying attention. Okay, so as I was looking at your website and researching and things, there are different facets of your work. So you're doing energy healing. Let's talk about that a little bit.
So for years, it was my dad's death that was very much inspiring me to find out more about easing suffering and learning to heal, learning that there were energy healers around. And that fascinated me. And as I started practicing with many, many people, that the animals started showing up as well. People said, well, if you could help lower my blood pressure, maybe you can help my animal. And I started noticing that as I tuned in to the subtle energy body, which everyone has, in the quiet stillness of being that transmitter. It's not my energy, but I'm flowing universal life force energy, which is what Reiki means. It's a Japanese word for hooking up through this system of attunements or initiations from the master to the student. Also very spiritually, it came about spiritually, but it's a direct transmission practice so that each master awakens that connectedness within each student. It exists, but we need the hookup, kind of like the electrician. I don't know how electricity works at all, but
Right.
I know that when I push a button, it works because an electrician who didn't know how to hook up the wires came to the house at one point and hooked us up to the main generator.
That's
And
a
that's
great analogy. I love
right.
it.
And
Yeah.
that's all I really understand. That there are ways to get hooked up, and Reiki was a beautiful direct hookup to universal life force. So as I'm immersing in that for years and decades, I'm starting to become more sensitive to subtle energy. And I noticed that many things that were blocking our subtle energy pathways, that seem to be in the way of well-being, that seem to be causing the disease processes, were unexpressed emotions. And so much of the work became focused on helping people to healthfully and appropriately express feelings that have been maybe too uncomfortable or a long time of piling up, and to start do that work. And I found that if I didn't teach that, I wasn't able to accelerate people's empowerment to heal themselves. And I was always about people healing themselves, not keep coming to me as the healer. So I never loved the role of the healer, even though it's a beautiful way to help people. I always wanted them, which Reiki was amazing. I had to become a Reiki master to teach, because I thought that's why I'm here. I want to empower everybody that what I'm doing, I wasn't doing. I was a lawyer, remember? If I can do this, so can you. And that to me was the great teaching. That was the huge empowerment, that it's not just this special thing that God gave me, even though, yes, I've awakened one of my divine gifts, if you will, but there are pathways to follow that everybody can follow and have that awakening as well, and start activating those healing channels. So that to me was the great news,
That we
Uh,
can all be our own healers, and you can teach us how.
yes. And
Yeah.
so in the path of healing, of course, becomes how do we, instead of constantly diving into our pain body and our stuck emotions and all of the old story, I started noticing maybe, I don't know, 15 years in, that it became really important to learn how to reset our alignment, which is the work more and more you're doing, is the reset, I would call it. Maybe more than release, which has a lot of emotional, you end up re-experiencing your emotions sometimes in certain ways of people are teaching release work.
Mhm.
I wanted to shortcut, to the reset. If we just spend more time resetting, which meditation does,
Mhm.
that's a reset to that inner stillness. Reiki is a beautiful reset, and many of the other alchemy and energy healing tools I share help you to align with the happy, peace, joy, present, grounded inner stillness that is within us all more directly, and not have to go through all the pain body and the painful moments. And so more and more, which is why I designed the Bliss Retreat, ultimately was to get away from the whole digging into past, digging into painful emotions, and to give people the direct experience of the reset. How do we consciously command and call forth these energetic states of the higher states that we all want, more happiness, more peace, more fulfillment, more flow? And so the reset is where I'm mostly focusing now. And there's release involved. We have to know how to let go, especially now, oh my gosh, with what's happening in our in our world with pandemics and politics, oh my, you know,
Right.
um, we do need to learn how to let go of other people's energies because we're all impacted by the collective. But more and more, I want to focus on how do we reset to our highest joy daily, regularly, minute to minute, you know, and those are the things that I am now putting more emphasis on. So it's been a journey for me as well, what I focus on, but they all opened up for me within the context of um, the aftermath of my father's death and my journey to want to understand how to ease suffering and understand life and death and everything in between. So
Yeah.
it all kind of, to me, it was all the same. And I understand people brand it in a very distinct way. But when I finally put my newer website together, Heal, Manifest, Awaken, to me, they were all part of the same processes. They weren't really separate. One bled into the other beautifully. And I didn't understand why somebody wanted to claim, well, I'm a medium over here and I can connect to spirit, but over here is manifesting. And because to me, in the states that I was in, they were all happening. They were all part of the package that we awaken one piece and the rest is actually connected to those higher states.
Right.
Healing happens naturally when you're in a high state of joy. You know, we don't have to focus on the disease or the illness pattern. The higher state will bring about the fulfillment and healing in the body. So to me, they all flow together, but I understood that people had segmented ideas of all these things.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, I'm in the process of writing the Happy and Free on Purpose is the working title. I don't know if it will wind up being that, but it's that everything that we think we want it because we think it's going to make us happier. And
Yes, the original question, what do
yeah,
you want? Why
right.
not go straight for happy?
Exactly, exactly. Which is the way that you open this interview, which I wrote my intention that this was going to be amazing, and it has been. It's just awesome. And so you talked about your Bliss retreats. Are those ongoing? Do you have another coming up in the future that we can?
I do actually. The next one will be March, the final weekend in March. I think it's the 27th and 28th. I just rescheduled that. So you're the first to know.
Okay. And will they be in person or will they be virtual still?
This time it will be virtual. I moved it to virtual given that I've been teaching via phone for years and online for years, and I love in person. Don't get me wrong, but for a while I was teaching everything mixed, virtual and in person, and so it's not a huge shift to go virtual. And I started noticing that I was able to do the direct transmission parts of the part where I'm really downloading that space directly in an initiatory form of the Yeshua and the Magdalene energies, and that's a whole other topic, but that's part of the Bliss Retreat. But I was doing that over the phone anyway, without video, without. So actually, the video platform gives me a feeling of. I just taught Reiki for the first time virtually, which I never thought I would be doing because I love in person. But the truth is energy, and it has no limits. And I could feel people over the phone for years without even a visual and tap into their energy body. So I've been doing it forever, and it's just, I hope to do live again someday when it feels more accessible and safe.
Great.
But right now, I'm finding that this is the way to go. So yes.
And that was one of the gifts of us shifting the way that we do things is you can reach more people
Yes.
if they don't have to travel to you,
Yeah.
so that they can be anywhere in the world. And we know that, of course, energy is limitless. So
Yeah.
it's nice for us to be in the same room together, and we will again, but we also won't let go of the new ways of teaching where, we have a broader reach and we can help more people. I love that.
I love it too, and it's sort of demanding that we shift our belief system about the limits of our consciousness and our physical realities.
Right.
It kind of puts us up against that a little bit.
Yeah.
So I had a grieving process for myself when I canceled the retreat last year, and there's a sense of loss in wanting to gather, but I've been doing this forever, and I can tell you the energies are just as powerful and high, and I trust that because it's been happening for years, and I'm getting the comments for years. So
Right.
yeah.
Awesome. Okay, and you also have a free gift for us. Tell us what that is and um, how to get it. It's on your website.
Yeah, so this is an activation. I call it an activation because it is not just a guided meditation. It is a energy transmission, if you will, and it's an activation of an aspect of the heart chakra, the feeling body on steroids, which we're calling the higher heart chakra. And so this higher heart chakra activation works with opening the higher chakras and that channel so that we can expand our ability to receive the higher consciousness energies more easily. The expanded bandwidth of light and love that is streaming right now very powerfully, but we're not always in a position to receive it. So this sets up a very conscious pathway and activation to help easily attune to those energies. And when I first recorded it, it was all channeled, if you will, directly guided. It was so powerful that I had to re-record it and tone it down because people were having such physical openings that most of our, and this was years ago, it's a different version now, but I actually had to ask the consciousness that was coming through me, the guides, if you will, to tone down the energies so that it would be more easily integrated into the body, because it was almost like a blasting open of the throat chakra with the heart, so it's that ability to not only be more open and compassionate, but to actually be in alignment with and express that. And I would say that's what's up for our world right now is, the wisdom seekers, all of us who need to be more heard and seen and expressing our truth, which, a lot of us have been very quiet.
Yeah,
And the
I'm
world
totally
needs
going
us.
to do that. Sorry?
Yeah. The world needs us to speak from that great compassion and the higher wisdom and truth. So that's what was kind of getting opened up, and it was very dramatic. And I said, maybe we could tone that down a notch, and it came in much softer. Still powerful, but
I,
softer.
I can't wait to check that out. I'm going to do that this very day. It's KumariMullen.com,
Kumari Healing.
KumariHealing.com.
KumariHealing.com. Kumari Healing. Yeah.
And wherever you're listening to or watching this podcast, you can check the show notes and I'll give you a link directly to there. And it's all over the website. So just look for it and download it and get to know Kumari better, and maybe look into a Bliss retreat in March, which could be absolutely amazing. And I'm going to look into that too. Anything you want to add before we wrap things? We could talk all day, and we'll do this
Do you want to
again.
do a little bliss practice? Do you want to have an experience?
Yeah.
For that? Okay.
Sure. How long will it take?
We can do a short version, maybe 3 minutes.
Okay, we definitely have 3 minutes. Absolutely.
Okay, beautiful. I love the experientials. We can talk and talk, but the proof is in the experience.
Mhm.
So the thing I want to lead people into is two vibrational states that they're going to be disarmingly simple, but they're really, really powerful. And the first is present. We're going to connect with the frequency and vibration of present, because part of the reason we're not feeling this higher level of happiness, joy, and finally bliss state is we're not in present time. We're thinking about the past and we're worrying about the future, and we're all over the map, and our energies are very scattery. So let's we will connect to present and then happy, and I'll guide you through that. And this isn't just a thinking experience. The power of this is realizing that at any given moment you can connect to the vibrational frequency, the energy imprint, and consciously choose to align to that frequency within your being. So we'll start with calling all parts of yourself to present. Just take a few deep breaths where you slow down breathing, you bring your focus inward. And it's like a mini soul retrieval. Call all parts of yourself spiritually, mentally, emotionally, physically present. Right here, right now. You may feel a sense of being collected up, feeling more contained, more centered, as your energies are starting to organize into present time. With each breath, I am more and more present. Present. So we're going beyond the thought of present into the feeling. The thought is electrical, the feeling becomes magnetic. We want to align with the electromagnetics and command that present alignment consciously. Present. And just notice how this feels from a few moments ago. Just observe, be the witness. And next, we're going to connect to the frequency and vibration, the energetic imprint, if you will, of happy. We're using a stepping stone to joy and bliss because we want to give a platform to step into it. So let's start with happy. We all have a sense of what that feels like. Call in the vibration and the frequency of happy. Because you can. You have choice. You have the power to call forth any state or energetic alignment that you choose in any moment. And every part of you starts tuning into that. All sorts of things happen in the brain, in your biochemical body. Happy. Just bring your focus back if it wanders. And happy might be hard for some of you. So think of a time, an experience where you were happy. Might have been on the beach, sunset, holding a baby or a puppy. Just conjure up an actual time until you can feel how you felt. So you start to entrain yourself to the feeling of the memory of happy if you can't get there so easily and present. Happy. With each breath, I'm feeling more and more happy. And breathe. All parts of my being are starting to align and connect with happy, right down to the cellular level. Just notice that shift. With each breath, I am happier and happier. And you can even allow your lips to turn up into a smile. It sends a signal to the brain to release endorphins. It's a beautiful practice in yoga. They always say have a little smile playing on your lips. And that's to trigger that state of contentment, that ever-present contentment that's possible, that moves you into happy. And you can gently come back to opening your eyes, coming into your awareness of your environment, holding that inner awareness of present and happy. How was that?
Loved it. Loved it. Loved it. That was great.
The mind wants to fight that, well, if it was so easy, I could just do it. But the words and the choice of saying, I call forth the connection to the vibration of, it's very, very commanding that we are in charge of our radio station tuner. And no one really taught us that, rather than being in reaction to. Once we take charge of that radio station tuner, saying, I can set my dial wherever I want, then whoop.
Yep. And this is what I tune into. Awesome. I love it so, so very, very much. Thank you
Wonderful
so
place
much
to
for
start.
being
Yes.
here. Yeah. Yeah. So wherever you're listening to this or watching this, look in the show notes and you'll find the links to connect with Kumari and get your free gift. And I'll be live on Facebook tomorrow to tell you about my experience with it because I'm going to try it tonight. So anything else you want to add before we close up for today, Kumari?
There's so much to share, but I think in this moment, I want to let everybody know how powerful a creator they are, and that in any given moment, they can choose happiness, choose contentment, choose peace.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. Okay. So next week, I'm going to be back with a psychic medium. Her name is Dana Michelle. Anyway, I'll tell you more about her, but that's going to be so very, very exciting. In the meantime, say goodbye to Kumari and join me next week. And in the meantime, remember that happiness is a choice and you can always choose to be happy first. I'll see you next week.